You're listening to the Music Tech Teacher podcast, episode number 40. Welcome to the Music Tech Teacher podcast. Music tech tips, lesson ideas, advice, news, and interviews, especially for music teachers. Brought to you by midnightmusic.com.au. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Music Tech Teacher podcast. I'm Katie Wardrobe, a music technology education trainer, speaker and consultant from midnightmusic.com.au, where I help music teachers use technology effectively in music education. In this episode, I talk with David Biel. He's a band director from Texas who actually has his own podcast, which is called Beyond the Clef. In this episode, David shares some of the tech tools that he uses to run his band rehearsals more effectively, and we also talk about why and how he started his own podcast. As usual, you can find all the links to the things that we talk about on the show notes page for this episode at midnightmusic.com.au/40. My guest today is David Biel. David grew up in South Texas, and during his time attending Ronald Reagan High School, he performed at over 15 regional, state and national band competitions, picking up a number of Division I titles and awards along the way. He's now putting all of that band experience to good use in his current teaching position as Director of Bands at Heritage Middle School in Lubbock, Texas. Tennis. I'm going to leave that in. My kid plays tennis. It's on my mind. And that's where David's currently in his 10th year of teaching and his 7th year as the Director of Bands. And in his spare time, in inverted commas, David hosts his own podcast, which is called Beyond the Clef. David was originally a bassoon player, and he also plays euphonium and describes himself as a mad Star Wars fan. So welcome, David. Good to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. We're such a time difference here, and you're in morning and I'm in night.
Yeah, and it's a beautiful day here, I have to say. There's constantly a bird outside my window, so every time I'm recording a podcast or a video of some sort, it's a minor bird. I don't know if you have them there, but they are the most annoying birds in the world, and it chirps consistently every 3 seconds or so throughout the entire day. So it's just
kind of ruins your recording environment.
Oh, I know. And I kind of switch it out for a while, and then when it becomes conscious, it's all over. So anyway.
Well, it's actually one of the first cold days here, and it's kind of wet, and so it's going through that. And then now the time just changed. So every time I'm thinking on the weekend I'm going to set up my lighting for a podcast or whatever, then I always record at night, and it completely screws that up.
Yeah, that's right. That's one of the reasons I don't do the video podcast thing. And I'd love to actually know more about that. So just tell us about where it started.
Podcasts.
Yeah, I know. Well, I'm thinking there's an extra level of technicality involved anytime you do video, no matter what you're doing. But just before you talk about that, go back to when did the podcast start and what made it start? What was it you that was driving that podcast to begin?
Yeah. So Beyond the Clef has been actually kind of a project on my mind for about 5 years or so. But when I started getting into podcasting, that it was a really cool resource, and I didn't know exactly how to make it happen. And so I started talking with some friends, kind of bouncing some ideas off. It didn't really ever stick with some. And then about 2 years ago, I have a friend, Marianne White, who teaches here in Texas as well, in San Antonio at a middle school. And we both kind of got together and started to try to get a podcast up and going. But then we found that with scheduling and kind of getting it launched off the ground, and we both have full-time jobs, it was really kind of hard. And then also just kind of financially getting everything going, getting the equipment and whatnot. So we put it on hold. And then I approached actually a travel company, Director's Choice Tour and Travel. And I have a lot of friends there, and they were very supportive, and they're very great supporters of music education. And they were happy to sign on to the project and help us out. And they helped us with the marketing and the equipment and whatnot. And so Marianne is still involved in the project. And then we've been able to, through them, since they are a travel company and service many people across a large range of disciplines in music, their resources of connections have really helped us as well. So I get to find people and I get to meet people that I wouldn't necessarily have known or been able to connect to. And so it kind of lends legitimacy, I think, to what we've done, and it's been really great. And the whole idea from the get-go has been, I wanted to create. I was going to conventions. We have a convention in Texas twice a year, and actually, I saw you at the Texas Music Educators Association convention
so
2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah,
you were a part
2
of
years
the time
ago.
group,
Yeah,
the technology group, and my friend Marianne White pulled me in. Like, you gotta watch this gal, and it was really fun, and I loved it, and I went on your website and started looking at Midnight Music, and so we started to. We have these conversations. We'd be talking about technology and friends, and then we'd call over the phone and whatnot. So we thought, what if I could take these professional development conversations and not have them at 2 times in the year, but have them spaced out throughout the whole year?
Yeah.
Kind of make them topical, but then also with such a modern society and with so many young teachers, they get podcasts, and then we can create something that's searchable. So if somebody wants to know specifically something about GarageBand, they can go back through our podcast and look through all the GarageBand things, or something like clarinet tuning or recruiting or whatever it happens to be, and they can find that information so it's timeless.
Yes, I agree. I love that too. And podcasts, I think I've spoken about this on the show before. Podcasts for me have been my biggest source of learning for my own benefit over the last, 8 or 9 years or so. And that similar reasons for me wanting to start this one is that, that sort of lasting listen anytime, anywhere kind of thing, which you can do. And it's just so good. And I think 5 years ago, it would have been maybe a little bit more difficult, but the technology's so kind of easy nowadays. Not always easy. It doesn't always work perfectly, but, the technology is much more available and not so expensive anymore. And it's great that, anyone can really do this sort of thing if they want to. But tell me about...
And also internet technology. So I can I could Skype with somebody across the planet right now. And I happen to have fiber here at my home, which really helps.
Yeah.
And at my school, I have that as well. But in some cases, 5 years ago, it would have not been possible to do a straight video or audio podcast without having interruptions.
Yeah, and that was one of the things that prevented me for quite some time doing it, because we do not have great internet in Australia generally, but at my house now, I've got much better internet. So I have to say, your picture, we actually have our video on just for the benefit of those people listening, and your picture is super clear. It's really good. So hopefully mine is the same. And
good. I
know that if the internet connection's not so good, I tend to get the guests to turn their video off, which is not as good, because it's nice to see each other when you're chatting. And
right.
I'm looking currently at David's, the room that he's in, where there's a couple of Star Wars pictures, very tasteful Star Wars pictures on the wall.
It's called cool. Classy Star Wars.
Classy Star Wars.
That's the room.
I love it. Do you do a May the 4th themed, day with your students at all?
We definitely joke around with it, and I have a large collection of little knickknacks of things that students like to bring me, because whenever they see something, they're on vacation, they see something Star Wars, and they're like, Mr. Biel needs this, and that's really sweet of them.
There's so much around.
There's a lot of coffee mugs, a lot of Darth Vader coffee mugs.
Yeah. It's funny. As soon as you mention to people that you're into something, a specific thing, oh my gosh, she's showing me one at the moment. That's a very cool one. Yeah, I have a friend who's, she's kind of into flamingos, and she let this be known to a few friends, and she now has so many things with flamingos on, and they are kind of on trend at the moment, so they're appearing everywhere. Clothing, mugs, homewares and stuff.
Yeah, I call that the rooster effect, because my mom, as a kid, she said, I want a rooster for the kitchen for the centerpiece. And then she got like 15 from family members. So never ask and never tell anybody. Just don't have a personality.
No,
and then you won't collect extra crap.
And so with the podcast, why the decision to do the video format for that? I mean, obviously, for people who haven't listened to the podcast before, you can still subscribe through iTunes and just have the audio portion. But if you go to the Beyond the Clef website, you can see the video versions there, or on YouTube as well. They live on YouTube, don't they? I think the video versions. But why the decision to do that particular format?
Yeah, well, actually, we were originally doing audio, and that was, it's obviously much easier. And you were saying it's another level. It's actually, I feel like, another 4 or 5 levels of of difficulty because when you're talking about video, you're talking about the quality of the video. Then you're talking about like the rendering, the file size, the lighting. You got to get the microphone and it's very hard to get going. And then, for instance, in Skype, in order to get you onto Skype, I have to have my video and your video.
Yeah.
And then sometimes do I put those next to each other? Do I put one out and then switch? So I have to have a switcher, or do I edit and post? And so if I'm editing it later, or actually our editor at the company really helps out, and he's fantastic, but it's a lot of time that he has to take to do that. So we're working on ways to prevent that time. But I think kind of the reason is we're going to do everything. We're going to try to do it really well right now, and we're still evolving. Beyond the Clef is less than a year old. We did our first kind of soft launch this year at our summer convention in Texas, and we're going to continue it on. And we're still learning from it. We're still getting feedback, seeing what people are doing, trying to get some metrics, trying to get some data, and figure out, are people really watching this at some point? Because, I mean, to be fair, I don't want to look at my ugly mug for a half hour. So that's what I feel. But somebody might. I don't know. And but are they going and just listening to it? We're still trying to figure that out. But also, you can connect much easier with a person and with a face. And so that's always, much easier. I'm always a person that if I can just talk to you, it's much easier than text or listening or whatever.
Yeah.
And then also, there are some components sometimes. For instance, I had an episode early on with my friend Marianne, and we did some stuff and we did some screen captures. And so that was nice to be able to show that with the app as well, which is hard to describe on audio all the time. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have that sort of love-hate thing with video too. It's so good for the engagement level. And for a long time, whenever I was creating tutorial videos, I would pretty much only do screen capture of, slides or software, whatever it was that I was showing. But then I started running some live webinars, like training webinars, and they were basically 4-week online courses, for music tech stuff. And I did have my video camera turned on me as well. And people were saying, look, it's so much better. It seems to sink in more when we can see you as well as the screen. So, you can do that picture-in-picture thing where I'm small, but they can still see the software screen or the slides or whatever. And yeah, it's great, but it is that extra thing. I kind of got to do my hair and, make sure the lighting's
exactly.
okay.
Yeah, and right now I've been through a whole day of contacts and West Texas dirt, and so I'm sure my eyes are bloodshot. And those things, you think about that, and it's hard to, and my hair is I'm lightly graying, but when you get lights on it, it's funny because it shimmers gray, and you're like, wow, that's so you have to be, you're so personal when you're like that. I just have to let it go and just be. We were talking. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to ask you about the workflow for the podcast. Do you do batching of recording of episodes? So this is something I do from time to time, and I really need to get better at it, where I sit down and record, say, 4 episodes in one sitting, and then I don't need to worry about it for 4 weeks. But, this is always in the back of my mind. That's my ideal thing. Set aside a whole day and record 4 or 6 or whatever it is. But it's just really hard to actually make the time. Or when I do it, I get excited that I don't have to do it for a while. And then it gets to the 4th week and I'm like, oh my gosh, now I've run out of episodes and I need to do some more. So do you try and do that with yours at all?
Well, and again, we're so new that we're still trying to figure it out. So right now, we're very fortunate because I went ahead and did about 12, I think, episodes at our convention.
Yes.
And it was a lot of monster drinks to get through that, energy drinks. And we did those episodes. And then so they've been coming out, and then they've survived us until about now, which was very fortunate because I'm also, again, full-time job. This is a kind of a stressful time of year until now. Now it's kind of evening out. And so I'm starting to pick up some more episodes. And so that's kind of the format we've been on. Not saying that that's what we're going to end up doing, but I've been trying to, whenever we do it, just go ahead and do 3 or 4 at a time or whatever I can get. But it also has to do with because we have guests. It's really not me on the show. It's all about the guests.
Yeah.
Something I didn't even mention there is that with the Beyond the Clef, the whole idea is that I don't know anything about my profession. I got to go out and figure it out,
Yeah.
but I'm going to record it when I do.
Yeah.
So I'm always in the brain that I don't want people to be listening and coming in for me. I'm trying to be and it's hard to kind of take this mentality as a host. I have to kind of dumb down and ask the silly questions I kind of know the answers to, and I know because I've been an experienced teacher more or less, but I have to kind of play the dumb card and then get the information out of the guest. And so because that's really what we want. We're going out and finding fantastic master teachers and incorporating their ideas in so that people can get some ideas from. So kind of just an interesting take on it. You have to kind of act.
Yeah. And I sort of try to do that a little bit as well, because you really got to try and there's a special skill in putting yourself back in the shoes of someone who knows nothing. You know, there's a saying about the curse of knowledge, you know, and as soon as you know a lot about a topic, it becomes harder to maybe teach someone else because, you know, you maybe don't remember what it was like to know nothing about that topic. And so I'm constantly I always have that in the back of my mind, you know. And
that's exactly what. Oh, I'm sorry for interrupting. That's exactly what I do all the time, because if I have a student teacher or a new teacher come in, you know, they might be really great at the saxophone, but they have no idea how to teach it to a child that doesn't even know which end to blow into.
Yeah.
So it's so hard to dumb down on that level. I'm not saying dumb down, but to get down to the different level of, you know, zero. Yeah. Which is a possibility.
And the nice thing I find when you are teaching someone who knows nothing or around people who know less about a specific topic, it makes me feel kind of like, oh, wow, I do know a lot after all. You know, sometimes I've got a friend who's learning piano at the moment, and, you know, he's a complete beginner, adult beginner, but complete beginner. And you just realize how much you've picked up over, you know, for me, 40 years of playing piano, and how much you know about piano playing, but also just music theory in general. And that's a long road, but it's a good road, but it's a long road, you know. Man, that's really exciting. I think it's really great. I really want to get into the habit of doing some interview recordings at events as well. So I'm going to just get myself a little portable, you know, Zoom recorder or something to use. And I've got enough microphones and cables and things. But that's my intention, actually. I'm going to head back to Texas for TMEA next year and February. So I'm planning on bringing a kit of stuff, and I'll try and find a little corner somewhere. There's not many quiet spots, I don't think, but find a quiet corner somewhere and do some interviews there. So it'd be good to get a few done.
I'll help you out. We'll
that'd be
team
great.
Up together.
Yeah,
and you're talking about how you can just record. If anybody was out there, and what's so fun about podcasts, I think, is that, like, for instance, there's some other, I'll say, quote, competing podcasts. But what I love about podcast is that's not really a thing. You don't really compete. It's just different people, different ideas, even though we might be even doing the same things. Yeah. There's other things out there. And so for anybody who wants to start that, really it's just so simple as, if you wanted to be mobile, just take your phone. Yeah. You know? And if you wanted a microphone, I'm right now using one made by Shure. It's the Shure Motif, Motiv, Motive. But I say because, you know, and there's different versions of that. There's like a Snowball desktop version, but there's also one that is very small, and it attaches to the phone. And for instance, for an iPhone, it attaches through the Lightning connector. Oh, cool. And this Snowball one does that as well. So it's really easy to get a great microphone that you can point, you can adjust, whatever, and then you can hook up headphones to it. And I've done that before too. You have just a little mobile studio. Yeah, so it's really simple just to do that. And there's some apps that do it, but just honestly, whatever gets the video done. You know, I have some Zoom cameras. I actually have two of them, and they're great for all the sound stuff that they do. But the fisheye thing kind of freaks you out because there's a fisheye lens on it, like a it's late in the day, the popular
like a GoPro
square camera, thank you. Like a GoPro. And so it's kind of like that, and except that it's, you know, for musicians, fantastic. You can plug in XLR in the back, all that cool stuff, but it's just much easier sometimes just to use a phone, you know? Yeah,
I know. I agree. And a big thing that I'm into is use what you have already. Yeah. If you've got something, and sometimes people might not know that their phone does that sort of thing, or that you can purchase a microphone. Often in workshops I'm running, I'm saying, you know, you can get a microphone that plugs into your phone or your iPad, and it just brings the level up because you're not picking up everything, like the minor bird out the window, but you're just picking up hopefully only your voice or whatever you want to capture. So yeah, using what you've got is a really, really good thing.
And you're talking about video and the complexities of adding video to a podcast. Adding the video and trying to record that adds, besides the fact that the video recording equipment, the switching equipment, or all that is, you're talking, the dollars are going up, and you're adding on other digits, and so stick to audio. Stick to
audio, yeah, totally real. Don't worry. I get my taste of video when I'm making, courses and tutorials and that sort of thing, and that's enough. The one video thing that I still have not quite wrapped my head around, and it's so silly. I've done it sort of okay in the past, but every time I go to set up, I can't remember what I did last time and I need to write it down, is recording my iPad. And this is where I want to capture my voice speaking about something, but also the audio coming out of the iPad as well.
Oh, yeah.
And to do that really well. And I've kind of done it where basically the only way I can figure out to do it well is to capture the video aspect with my voice. That's one part, and then I'll capture the audio separately from the iPad, and then I sync them up together. And that's the thing I've arrived at, and maybe there's a much better way which I'm missing, but anyway, I need to
I've used those before to give you maybe this will help. I've done it two ways. If you connect your iPad to a Mac and you open up QuickTime, you can add it as another camera. And then you record. And so that's one way I've done screen capture. I don't know how the audio works. You have to check on that. I do know in the new iOS, what are we on, 11 12, whatever it is. Yeah. There's a screen capture button now that'll do that internally. So hopefully it'll be able to capture your voice and over the audio. That's always the problem.
I'm wondering about the internal audio. I need to play with that. I haven't played with that at all, but that's essentially what I've done. Plugged the iPad into my Mac, and I've actually just captured the audio of the iPad through Audacity, and it's worked fine. But I just feel like there might be some better kind of workflow and that sort of thing. This episode of the Music Tech Teacher podcast is brought to you by the Midnight Music Community. The Midnight Music Community is an online space for music teachers who'd like help using technology in their music lessons. There are online courses, video tutorials, lesson plans, music tech news, and professional development certificates are provided for any training that you undertake. I'm inside the community every day, personally answering members' questions and sharing tips and ideas. The best thing is that you get to connect with hundreds of other music teachers just like you and share your own experiences and occasional music tech frustrations. For more information and a special joining price just for the listeners of this podcast, visit midnightmusic.com.au/podcast offer. That's midnightmusic.com.au/podcast offer. So tell us about favourite apps or things that you use regularly in your actual teaching beyond the podcast. What do you use in your teaching the most or frequently?
Well, the most, I'll use this, and my students will use this a lot, is an app called Tonal Energy, TONAL Energy. And have you used this before?
I have a little bit, but not much.
Yeah. It's really fantastic because it's for, I'll say, musicians. It was designed by some wind musicians. So that was kind of where it's at. I don't know how handy it is for maybe a vocal musician or an orchestral musician, but I know it's definitely applicable. But what's great about it is it's, as a band director, I have a tuner that's a really fancy Peterson tuner that's $1,000, and then this Yamaha harmony director that's $12. All these nice things, but this is a $4 app. A kid can have it on their phone, and it's Android and iOS. It works on the iPad, and what's really fantastic about it is it's a great tuner. It tunes the note, and there's a little smiley face that comes up when they get it right.
That's right.
Which seems very silly, but it's a very positive affirmation. It's simple for everybody to understand, but it also goes way beyond that. So the benefits of it could do a spectral analysis on your overtones, and I've never ever gotten into all that stuff. But if somebody could tell me how to do that, that'd be great. But you can play sounds, you can analyze, you can record. There's really interesting tools for you to go back and be able to hear those sounds when you're playing them, record, hear the tuning, see the tuning. Very visual app. The number one benefit for me, I deal with 4 different keys routinely, instruments in F, E flat, B flat, and which one did I say? C. Yeah.
That
so
one.
So I deal with those routinely, and having to explain to a 10 or 11-year-old how to go to the piano and then transpose, there's a lot of steps in there that they can get it wrong. Now, obviously, that's something that I do. That's literally my job, is to try to teach a child what concert F is, or concert E flat, or whatever it is. But if I can have that beginning French horn player, that beginning trumpet player, go up to this app, they can put the app in F, and they can hear a note played. And the note is not just synthesized random note. It's actually, the sound is a professional recording of a French horn on that note specifically. And it adds in all sorts of stuff. It also can do equal and just temperament for more advanced levels of stuff. And that's, I think, one of the biggest lightning changes to our industry as apps go. This is a fantastic app for $4, and I'll put it up on the big screen and use it. And so if I'm having to tune, the kids can all see the tuning. All the kids can see it, and they kind of stare at it and look at it because, I mean, it's a bright, shiny light, but they also can start to understand, ooh, that sounds high. Ooh, look, yeah, it's high. And so they're not just listening to me tell somebody else something.
Yeah, that's really good, because that can often be one of the more boring sections of a rehearsal for the kids, for the whole group.
Okay.
And that's when people start talking and, everyone's distracted. So, yeah, it's really good to have something where maybe more of the group are engaged in it all at the same time. I will explore it a bit more, that app. I had, once you find your tuning app or your metronome app, you kind of stick with it. So I had been using Clear Tune for ages, and then I was a little bit worried because it was on that list of things that had not been updated for a while, and I thought it was going to die when I switched to iOS 11. But then, at the last minute, they updated it, so I think it's all good now. I haven't checked it for a little bit. Yeah. So there was
you have your go-tos.
Yeah,
I do know. I was just looking on here. There are some string instruments, and they have I typically have, if you've ever opened the app, it has like a circle with all the instruments. And I like that because, again, kids can visually see how sound works, chromatic works. But then also there's, I think, a fretboard style and a keyboard style. So it depends on what you're using. You can actually change the, I play this kind of a looking note and it comes out with a sound rather than just a circle.
And so are all the sounds that are being played, are they all sampled sounds then for all of the different instruments?
I believe so. As I understand it, I believe so. And all I know is that it's just a fantastic, if it sounds like a clarinet. Yeah. Or even the difference between it sounds like a trombone versus a euphonium. There is a specific difference there in those different qualities of sound.
Yeah,
so and that helps with range too. So again, you're not having a tuba player trying to match A440 and a flute player trying to match A440. They're trying to match their octave and their exact note.
Yeah, that's really great. That's really, really good. Really impressive. Don't you love technology? These sorts of things, you just go, man, how do we do that? Yeah. I have to say, actually, doing arranging or composing and stuff in notation software, I didn't use it for ages, but I do now love the fact that you can view your score in everybody in concert pitch and not have to think in French horn, or do all the transposition in your head like I had to when I was at uni. I had to do it on paper, in my head, and kind of work stuff out. And I still think it's good. It's good to do that. It's good practice to learn that technique and to get used to it. It's a different way of thinking. But I do have to say, when you're in a hurry, man, and you just got to work out how the voicing of the chord is going to work stretched across different saxophones or something, it's really easy to just put everything in concert pitch and, divide the chord up.
Oh, yeah. I'm going through that right now, getting ready for our contest or festival coming up. And so I'm doing some study and you get confused and you start going through it. And then sometimes I always say whoever's on the podium, sometimes you can get confused. And so I'm saying something, and I got to look over at my assistant director, and I'm like, did I say that right? Did I say the right pitch? Like, yes, you did. Because so, it's something about when you're on the podium, it's different than when you're off. And then when you're off the podium,
Totally.
you're like, you just said you went the wrong way,
Yeah.
But I have a harmony director. Do you know what that is?
No, tell me.
Yeah, it's made by Yamaha. It's a little keyboard. And it's built for, again, equal temperament, just temperament. It can help get the harmonies together and all that stuff. But I also use it because there's 4 keys on there: C, E flat, B flat, and F. And you just click one of those. And when I hit a C and it's clicked on F, I'm reading in that key. So it's really nice when I do have a score. And again, I'm not an accomplished piano player or transposing person at all. And so when I'm in the heat of the moment and getting that rehearsal done, I can go through and just click over to the key of F and then start looking at the score and playing the French horn part really quick for them.
Yeah, that's
and so,
cool.
or, especially I always go back to French horn because they have always the most difficulty,
Furthest
getting
away,
young.
yeah.
Yeah, because their partials are so close, and so it's so much easier to just click on that real quick, and it's the same thing with tonal energy.
Yeah,
So.
really so useful. And tell me about other apps. You mentioned GarageBand before, so you're using that with the bands as well that you're working with?
Yeah, I really don't get to use that as much. That's kind of my go-to. Let's do something real quick, record. Or what I do love is it's the so easy that a kid can do it.
Yeah,
it's a safe app that no matter what they do on there, it's not going to break it.
Yeah,
it's easy to have on the district iPad. And we do an activity. I got the idea from you, and I've adapted it since then. But where we'll go through and we have a beginning band method book, and there's like a 12 bars blues kind of segment, and we'll have them learn how to, they'll learn the song, then they have to learn how to record it, which teaches them the skills of they have to stay in time. They can't, if they mess up, they can't stop. Which we would teach them in an ensemble setting. That's the next step, They have to then analyze the music. Was that a good recording? Was that a bad one? Do I need to do that again? Another take? And then we have to teach them about the form. And so we have to teach them these 2 measures are, this key, then this one, then it goes back, and then so forth, like a 12 bar blues would. 12 bar blues would. And then, since they know all that, then we can add on a drum track. And so they can explore that. And then they can add on why they have to know the chords is they add on bass, and they might put on guitar or organ, and of course you get these really funky sounding kind of things coming out of it, but they're learning music, they're playing around with it. And then they learn, you can do this on your phone, your mom's phone, or, something like that at home. And they start to really, it opens up their eyes. And, every now and then you have a kid come back and be like, hey, look what I created now.
Yeah, that's so cool. I love that. I love that sort of activity. And then, really the skills that they learn in that, they can then apply to anything else. So if they're a songwriter or, they want to do cover versions of songs, and, all the same tech skills apply to the other projects as well. And yeah, it's so much fun. Have you played with the new updated version yet? I have
not got to.
2 days ago, I think I updated.
And it said, hey, here's the new features. I was like, go away, I got a thing to do.
Yeah, too much to think about. I know. It's funny, I have this online community, and I ended up recording a video just yesterday walking through the new features, the ones that I've found so far anyway. Because sometimes, after a while, you'll go, oh, I didn't discover this one back when it updated, but I sort of found most of the main ones. But there's a few things which I really love, and then a few that I don't love so much. They've changed the navigation of files, and, like when you first open it up and you're looking for a project that you've done previously, I had a lot of stuff organised neatly into folders, and the folders seem to have disappeared. All the projects are still there, but they're no longer categorised in my nice folders. And I had them that way so that I have a lot of example projects, so that in a workshop I can show some steps, but then I can jump to the final version and say, this is what you end up with, or even show that at the beginning. This is what we're going to do today. But, they're all scattered now. So I've got to go back and maybe recreate a new folder. Maybe I'm missing something. I don't know. But there's some cool new things. There's some great new world instruments in there, and also there's just because we did not need another way to create drum patterns in GarageBand, but there is now another way to create drum patterns in this beat sequencer thing, which is actually really cool. And I'm wondering why they didn't have that option in the first place. I thought that sort of feature would have been in the first early version.
Oh, yeah.
But but that's kind of
whenever
cool.
we get to that point in the conversation with our 6th grade students, our 10, 11-year-olds, we always get to the smart drummer part, and that creates a really interesting conversation about oxymorons and
Yep.
If
I
that
always make
actually
that
is
joke
true.
too. I make that joke about all the smart instruments. Whichever one I say first, they get the joke. Like if it's the guitar, the smart guitar, bring out the smart guitar, oxymoron.
Right.
And someone in the room is always a guitarist, and they'll go, "Thank you."
And then in my case, if someone's in the room and they're a percussionist, they weren't listening anyway. So
Oh, now we could go on with music jokes.
Yeah,
you can just apply the same joke to and slot in the instrument name there.
Yeah, right. Yeah, sure.
And what about sheet music? Do you do digital reading of sheet music with the iPads as well? Is that something you get into much?
I use an app called ForScore, and it's just FOR score. And it is probably one of the biggest changes that in technology stuff, and the go-to. I use it every single period, every single class, every single day.
Yeah.
Except when we have the bad technology day, which happens once a month. And when it happens, everything crashes. But we get it out of the way and we're good. So I think so. ForScore, as I go through it, it looks like you're a gig player and whatnot, and you got an iPad, and you want to put stuff in a set list and have music that's all digital in one place. That's kind of what it looks like to me. But how I use it is basically my giant classroom music marker board.
Yeah, right.
Black. And so I'm very fortunate in my district that we're very well supported, and I have some really great projection technology, and the projector screen is, I guess, the equivalent of a 17-foot TV. Wow. It's a 15 by 12, or I don't know my Pythagorean theorem, but it's a very large projection, and the projector is really bright. So in all the lights on, everybody can see a high contrast image like music, sheet music, cool. Black and white. And so what I do is I project that up there. I never use the marker board anymore, almost never. And I'll put that projection up there, and then it's so much easier. Again, you're taking steps of difficulty away for every single child in the room to say, instead of saying, okay, on the upbeat of 3 and measure 4 on the 4, whatever it is, you can say, look at this note. Now you touch this note.
Yeah.
And now I want you to draw in a marking. Please draw it in like this. And so again, because I have to teach kids from zero, so I have to teach kids how to mark their music.
Yeah.
We're going through holiday music right now, and we have a whole class on, here is Jingle Bells. This is new. Here you put your name here. This is how you number your measures. And so it's much easier to just go ahead and put this up on the screen. And I have an iPad Pro, the big one, and I got the Apple Pencil, and that's been fantastic. And it's very easy to very clearly define exactly what I want, exactly what the markings are. Here's where this is, drawing pictures or arrows or demonstrating sound through this giant projection, rather than, again, trying to do it on the marker board. And then you got to erase, and then erase is easy, clear, all done.
Yeah. I love that too. Yeah, I hadn't really thought about it in terms of teaching how to mark up scores, but it is such a big thing, and you can spend or waste a lot of time in rehearsals. Even getting kids to locate a place in a score, you're going like second page, third system down. What's a system? Not the line, right. Not the stave, it's the system, and going through all of that each time. Oh my gosh, it's a headache. So yeah, you're right.
Well, I'd like
really
to think even in my advanced rehearsal today of my 8th grade students who are, high functioning students in the schools, they're, but sometimes well enough 50-minute rehearsal, they'll get distracted and they won't listen to something, or, that's just normal, and so, or they'll, you do have different levels of paying attention to stuff. And I'm very cognizant of that, because in my adult life, as a teacher, I'm starting to realize when I'm in my professional development meetings, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't read this. I don't, how would my kids be able to do this? So sometimes how people learn is so different. And I'm a visual learner, as my wife will tell you from our trip to France a couple of years ago. She kept on telling me these words. This is how it is. This is what it is. And finally she had to write it down. I'm like, oh, okay. And I memorized it. So that made me think, okay, so kids need to see these things. Sometimes they need to see them. And of course, in a music setting, you hear it all the time. And then of course, tactile learning is, through the foot tapping or the clapping and whatnot. But just being able to say, encircle this and zoom in on a measure, it's very easy to, you can't do that on a marker board. But if I have a whole page of music and I want to look at one measure, I can zoom in on it, and then we can just talk about this. Okay, so draw an arrow. What about this note right here? What's important about this note? Oh, well, it's an E, but it's really an E flat because of the key signature. And all these conversations, I think you mentioned it earlier, the best benefit is the time that's saved by communicating the most effective way.
Yeah. Oh, God, that's so true. Yeah, and the learning thing as well. I'm the same. The visual aspect makes all the difference. I am not good at learning songs or, instrumental pieces, whatever, by rote. I have trouble, like that to me just takes a long time. But as soon as I've seen the sheet music, and it's the same with lyrics as well, I find my own kids in the car, we listen to songs a lot, and they learn a lot of lyrics just by listening over and over and over to the song. And they, the third time through, they can sing the entire thing. Whereas I'm struggling still with, okay, I've got the chorus, But as soon as I look up the lyrics online, because I get frustrated, I'm like, I just need to know what on earth they say in that sentence there, Look up the lyrics online. And once
What
I've
is
read
Taylor
it through,
saying? What is Taylor saying?
Oh, no, it's other things like Eminem is featuring heavily on the playlist at the moment.
Oh, nice.
You don't maybe want to read all of the words in those lyrics.
Right, exactly.
But, once I see it a couple of times and have read it through with the song playing, I find it so much quicker learning. And so it's that visual thing of doing it. And I always found growing up also, and I think this would match up with, your kids seeing the things on Fourscore on the screen like that, is with music, when I memorize music, I picture in my head where on the page certain phrases are. So I can always tell you, oh yeah, that phrase is at the top of page 2, or the bottom of page 4, because I just picture it. That's the way I've seen it and learnt it. So I think that would really help. Yeah.
Well, and what I like about Fourscore is that there's plenty of apps out there that, you can just put up Dropbox, put up a PDF up there, and it's there. And there's Acrobat and all the stuff that you can edit and mark through stuff, and that's completely fine. But what's so nice about Fourscore is that it's music centered. Yeah. And so there's stamps in there for quarter notes and half notes and crescendos and all that stuff. And of course, there's the highlighter function, or there's the marker function, all that stuff too, like a lot of apps have, but it's all music centered. Yeah. I will say though, with the stamps, the people who designed this Fourscore, Mr. Fourscore, if you're listening, or Mrs. Fourscore, please make the stamps for the quarter notes or the notes where when you touch it, it's the note head is where you move it, not the middle of the image.
I know.
Because it's so hard. I can plop down some, like a stave of music, and then I want to be able to touch right there, and that's an F, but it's the middle of the image, and so it counts the stem as well. And anyway,
frustrating.
That's first world problems,
like
I guess.
Calibration's off or something. I get that though. It's totally frustrating. And
there's plenty of features for, again, set lists and special stuff that I have never gotten into, and getting the library there. Usually for me, it's like upload to Dropbox, put it in quick, gotta go. The kids are crazy. Let's just get it done.
Do you set up your repeats with links back and forth with the pages? That's something it's brilliant. It's brilliant. Once you do that once, you'll never go back again.
Nice.
Because, you can basically be reading through a score, and let's say it's got a first and second time ending at some point. You can, in Fourscore, you can link the end of the first time bar back to the place you've got to go back to. So page 1, let's say. And so when you're reading through the score in 4-score, when you get to the end of the first time bar, you tap to turn the page essentially, but it takes you straight back to the return place, to the first page or whatever it is you're going back to. And it even highlights the beginning of the bar that you've got to look at. So if that bar is not maybe the first on the page, maybe it's halfway down, it kind of flashes at you like, hello, come back here. And
that's
then,
nice.
Yeah, and then you set up another link. So when you go through the second time, you set up another link which is like just before the first time bar, and then it takes you straight to the second time bar and so on. And you can do the same for coders and just straight repeat.
Wow.
So I love it's not very hard to do once you just read the instructions and have a go. It's just brilliant. So I used to sing in an a cappella group, and that's what I did with all our pieces. And it just saves, when you're in rehearsal, there's pages flying everywhere. As soon as there's a repeat anywhere, the whole ensemble will be like, oh, where do we go back to? I've lost the place, And then someone's lost and then parts fall off because they're not singing or playing anymore. But, setting up the repeats is such a good thing. I
haven't ever done anything for a performance. I'm too scared to do that. And also, so even though my iPad Pro is effectively a 8.5 by 11 sheet of music. And so, but a score is typically a little bit bigger than that, and also 2 pages. So I got to see the whole thing. And then also, there's the tactile. I want to flip ahead in the middle of a performance to make sure I know what's coming up, So I'm always too scared for that.
Yeah.
But it's there. And honestly, what I would like to use that for is like I have rehearsal or sectionals and everything's on my iPad. I don't have to go find that score wherever I left it in some other room. But with, we're going to be laughing about this in 10 years. We're going to have, we don't have a class. We have class iPads for a lot of our math and science and whatnot in our school, but they haven't come up with a way to have 70 iPads for my band rehearsal.
Yeah.
But that'll be the thing. And so, instead of their little binders, they have an iPad there, and they can use. It's just so much easier to get all that, and then it's not passing out music. It's just uploading it. Boom, boom, boom. It's to everybody.
Exactly. I have to say 2 things actually. Do you remember Harry Connick Jr. was one of the first performers on stage to actually use? It wasn't iPads at the time because it was way before iPads were around. But there was a special kind of music stand which had a digital score reader on it, and that was like, oh my gosh, amazing technology, because they were doing that. They just make a change in the dress rehearsal and then go, I'll just send it out to all the stands, and that was kind of cool. But I did see not long ago, I'm sure, I don't think it's a fake picture, but marching bands with iPhones attached instead of the little sheet music on the stand. So I don't know about the rain aspect though. If you're outside with a marching band, like what happens when it rains?
Well, actually, it's funny you said that, because I didn't even think about that. And I teach middle school students in Texas, and the most of the students have phones. Some don't, and that's okay. But I was at a rehearsal for the local college's Texas Tech University here, and their band, they had all their people out there and whatnot, and they have like their coordinate charts for the drill and the maneuvers, and they have to learn them. They're all on their phone. I was like, oh my gosh, all the copies and all the cutting and all that we had to do. And then they pull up a piece of music and they just scanned it and put it in their phone. I was like, that's brilliant. And so people are definitely doing that. And it's,
that's amazing.
It's really handy. And honestly, for me, I'd say that this is a joke, but 50% of my stress level is just the kids having the darn pencils on their stands, But and I joke with my assistant, and I was like, they all have their little booger pickers, and they can all use that all the time. They never leave that at home. So if I can, if they don't have the pencil and we have an iPad and we have 4-score, we can actually use. I mean, they can mark it up. They can do anything they need to, and they don't have to have another thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we had a
charging.
We had an ongoing joke about the band pencil growing up. My family are all musicians, and we used to kind of play in like musical theatre bands together, small ensemble, and there'd be like 6 of us in the pit band, and the running joke was at the first time someone needed to make a marking in the score, everyone would just go, who's got the band pencil? Like the one pencil.
The one. Pencil. Yeah.
My mum was directing a lot of the shows, and so she ended up just buying a whole box of, pencils and bringing that along to the band.
Yeah, I just say forget it, and I think I have 3,000 pencils, and I just get them, and I just say, here. I'm done with that fight.
Yeah, it's not worth it, is it? It's not worth it. Yeah, you got to pick your battles. I think that's the good thing. Excellent. It's been so great to chat today and to hear about the tech stuff that you're using. And I feel like we need a follow up later down the track and check in and see where things are up to then. And it's really great. And I'm hoping the podcast goes really well for you too. I'm really enjoying doing this one. It's been lots of fun. And like you said, it opens up that opportunity to talk to people you wouldn't normally. And sometimes I have people contact me, or other times I pinpoint people and, we cross paths, and I'm like, oh, it'd be great to chat on the podcast. And it's just another way to make great connections with people. And,
and I've learned so much from mine that it's just great getting to, some of the people I've talked to have been the pinnacle of our profession, master teachers, truly master teachers. And the things that I've learned just from starting this podcast, I have completely changed my program this year. It's been fantastic.
Wow, that's impressive. That's really impressive. Yeah, so true though. So thank you very much. We'll get this uploaded pretty quick, I'm hoping, and get everyone else to hear it too. So thanks for being with us today. And that's it for today's show. If you'd like more help with using technology and practical ideas that you can use with your students, come and join me inside the Midnight Music community, which is my online professional development space for music teachers who want to know a bit more about using technology effectively. For more information about the community, go to midnightmusic.com.au/podcast offer. The Music Tech Teacher podcast is hosted by me, Katie Wardrobe. You can find more information and links from today's episode at midnightmusic.com.au/40. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.